We had a Radio Shack computer, and we ended up numbering everything, punch it up on the computer, tell me what was on it.
Known as the happiest guitar hero to ever shred a stage, Eddie Van Halen wasn't just a legend. He was a burst of energy that lit up every room with his wild riffs, cheeky grin, and that contagious laugh. But behind that sparkle hid something darker, something he never talked about. At 62, Eddie finally opened up about a secret that shocked everyone. He'd been holding on to a personal blacklist, a list of 6 guitar icons the world thought he admired, but deep down, he couldn't stand them. These weren't just random names either. These were the same legends who'd once inspired him, shared stages with him, even shaped his style. But somewhere along the line, things went bad. They let him down, shut him out, or broke his trust so badly that it left a scar he could never forget. And once people found out who was on that list, the rock world absolutely lost it. Before we get into this wild story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you these untold rock tales. Now let's dive right in. Eric Clapton, the hero who broke his heart. The first name on Eddie Van Halen's secret hate list shocked everyone. Eric Clapton. Yeah, that Clapton. The man Eddie once called his ultimate hero. He used to spend nights playing Clapton's Cream records on repeat until the grooves practically vanished. Friends say if you stepped into Eddie's room back then, you'd probably hear Crossroads blasting loud enough to rattle the walls. Eddie didn't just admire Clapton, he studied him. Every solo, every lick, every tone. Clapton was the blueprint for everything young Eddie wanted to become. But everything changed in 1980, when Clapton gave an interview that crushed him to pieces. A reporter asked what he thought about Eddie's playing. Now, Clapton could have said something kind or even neutral, but instead he hit Eddie right where it hurt most, saying, "He's very good technically, but I don't hear much soul." When Eddie heard that, his world flipped. Close friends said he didn't explode with anger. He just went quiet. His face dropped and he whispered, "I learned everything from him." And he says that? That comment didn't just sting, it haunted him. But the real heartbreak came later, backstage in Los Angeles. Eddie finally got the chance to meet his idol in person. He was nervous but thrilled, like a kid about to meet Santa. But Clapton's reaction, ice cold. No smile, no warmth, just a few glances at his watch like he couldn't wait to leave. After the awkward meeting, Eddie muttered, "I think he just wanted it to end." That one cold encounter crushed him completely. Years later, Eddie admitted privately, "I loved the myth more than the man." That's why Clapton sat right at the top of his secret blacklist, not because of rivalry or drama, but because nothing hurts more than finding out your hero doesn't see you the same way you see them. Richie Blackmore, the cold stare. Next on that hidden list was Richie Blackmore, the mysterious force behind Deep Purple, and this one stung in a totally different way. Eddie never forgave him, and here's the crazy part. Richie didn't even need to say a single word. Their first meeting was supposed to be epic. Eddie walked in full of excitement, ready to vibe with another guitar legend. But the second their eyes met, everything froze. Blackmore didn't move, didn't smile, didn't even nod. He just stood there, locking eyes with Eddie in this cold, blank stare that silently screamed, "You don't belong here." Eddie talked about it years later and still sounded stunned, saying, "He just stared at me, didn't say hi, nothing." That moment burned into his memory forever. It wasn't words that cut him. It was that silent, icy rejection that spoke louder than anything else could. Eddie was the kind of guy who could walk into any room and make it brighter, always grinning, cracking jokes, and showing love to everyone around. But Richie Blackmore, he gave Eddie nothing. No nod, no handshake, not even a spark of respect. It was like a professional slap right across the face, in front of a crowd. And sadly, that cold treatment didn't stop there. At a late 70s festival, one of the tech guys, just trying to make small talk, suggested that Blackmore and Eddie should chat about guitar tone sometime. But Blackmore didn't even fake politeness. He turned slightly, voice low but sharp as glass, and muttered, "Not now. I don't have time for that kid." Eddie heard it. Everyone did. The silence that followed was brutal. You could feel the humiliation hanging in the air, thick like heat on a summer night. Then, just when you thought it couldn't get worse, Blackmore tossed another hit his way through the press. When a magazine asked what he thought of Eddie's wild, groundbreaking style, he shrugged and said, "He's a fine player, but too many notes." That wasn't feedback. That was a straight-up put-down, the kind that screams, "Stay in your lane, kid." From that moment, something inside Eddie changed. The teen-like admiration he once had for Richie, gone. What replaced it was something cold, a quiet, bitter understanding of how cruel idols can be. Years later, Eddie summed it up perfectly. Some people give you the shaft with their eyes. Then, with a half smile, he added, Blackmore didn't just give it, he perfected it. Joe Perry, the rock star who pretended Eddie didn't exist. So what really went down between Eddie Van Halen and Joe Perry? Before they even exchanged a word, the tension was thick. In 1978, Van Halen joined Aerosmith on tour, a dream gig for Eddie, since Aerosmith were his childhood heroes. But once the tour kicked off, that dream soured fast. Every time Eddie passed Joe Perry backstage, Perry just walked by. No glance, no hello, not even a polite nod. It was like Eddie was invisible. Eddie didn't bottle it up either. He said straight up, "Joe Perry would just give me the shaft with his eyes." That quiet disrespect hit harder than any insult could. He didn't expect praise or a big welcome, just a little respect between two guitar icons. But Perry's silence, it was icy, like he was using it as a weapon. The coldest moment came after sound check one night. Eddie, being his usual friendly self, walked over to check out the Gibson Joe was holding, smiling like always. But before Eddie could even get a word out, Perry lifted his hand, without turning his head, and motioned, "Don't talk." Then he just kept chatting with someone else, totally ignoring him. Eddie stood there, frozen, humiliated in front of everyone. Later, he told a friend, "It was like I didn't even exist." That single moment burned deep into his memory. Years later, Perry finally softened up and called Eddie a genius. But by then, it didn't matter. The wound was already carved too deep. The silence, the lack of acknowledgement, that cut stuck with him forever. With Joe Perry, the quiet spoke louder than words ever could. Randy Rhoads, the rival who hit Eddie where it hurt most. Now here's where things really blew up. Eddie Van Halen versus Randy Rhoads. This wasn't just tension, it was an explosion waiting to happen. The second Randy's name started showing up beside Eddie's in magazines, sparks started flying. Eddie had just flipped the whole rock guitar scene upside down with his wild tapping style and new sound. Then suddenly, here came this young, classically trained prodigy, and the press crowned him the next Eddie Van Halen. That headline? It stung. Eddie didn't hide his frustration either. In one interview, his tone was sharp when he said, "He learned everything from me." To Eddie, it felt like the industry was trying to hand his throne to a newcomer who hadn't earned it yet. Their styles couldn't have been more opposite. Eddie Van Halen was pure chaos, wild energy, emotion, and raw instinct exploding from every note. Randy Rhoads, on the other hand, was all about precision, clean, trained, calculated perfection. One played from his gut, the other from his discipline. But the media didn't care. They kept tossing them into the same imaginary ring like it was a full-blown guitar showdown for the crown. Then came the moment that turned friendly competition into real bad blood. During Randy's tour with Ozzy Osbourne, one of Randy's techs decided to pull what he thought was a funny prank. He taped a tiny photo of Eddie Van Halen right under Randy's wah pedal, so every time Randy pressed down, he was literally stomping on Eddie's face. Randy found it hilarious and left it there. The joke spread fast through the crew, turning into backstage gossip gold. But when word reached Eddie, something inside him snapped. In public, Eddie brushed it off, laughing like it didn't faze him. But privately, that joke hit deep. It wasn't funny, it was disrespect. To Eddie, that wasn't playful rivalry anymore. It was crossing the line. This was no longer about who played faster or cleaner, it was personal. To make things worse, Ozzy later made a comment that only threw gasoline on the fire. He claimed Randy didn't have a nice thing to say about Eddie. That one rumor spread fast and it cut deep. Eddie, the man who had changed the sound of rock forever, suddenly felt cornered, underappreciated, and overshadowed by someone he once thought looked up to him. But here's the twist. Randy Rhoads wasn't exactly living easy either. The endless comparisons to Eddie wore him down too. Both of them were tired of being pitted against each other, like gladiators fighting for the same spotlight. And deep down, they both knew the truth. They admired each other's genius, but were too proud to admit it. Even after Randy's tragic passing, his shadow never left Eddie. No matter how high Eddie climbed, the ghost of that rivalry followed him everywhere. Randy became the one guitarist Eddie could never outrun, even in death. Tom Scholz, the engineer who crossed Eddie's line. Now this next one wasn't about rivalry, it was about straight-up disrespect. The bad blood between Eddie Van Halen and Tom Scholz from Boston didn't start behind closed doors. It exploded right in front of thousands of screaming fans. Eddie had just finished tearing through one of his iconic solos, the kind that makes crowds lose their minds. Then, minutes later, Tom Scholz hit the stage for Boston's set and dropped a solo that sounded identical. Same phrasing, same rhythm, same vibe. It was like watching someone copy Eddie in real time. Eddie froze on the side of the stage, staring in disbelief like, did he really just play my solo? After the show, Eddie didn't hold back. He went straight to Scholz, face to face, and asked, why'd you play my solo out there? Why would you take something that personal? But Scholz, he just shrugged and said, it sounded good. Then he walked off like it was nothing. That cold dismissal hit Eddie hard. It wasn't just about the notes, it was about pride, about artistry. That arrogance lit a fire in him. It wasn't the imitation itself, it was the attitude behind it. Scholz acted like Eddie's sound was just another riff to recycle, like it wasn't born from sweat, pain, and passion. He didn't show respect. He didn't even acknowledge the conversation. To him, it was like Eddie was just another guitarist in the room. And when things could have cooled down, Scholz made it worse. At another festival months later, Eddie spotted him backstage and decided to be the bigger man, gave him a polite nod, trying to bury the tension. But Scholz didn't even flinch. Crew members swore he deliberately looked away, pretending not to see him. That was the final straw. Rick Derringer, the veteran who pushed Eddie past his limit. Rick Derringer holds a title no guitarist would ever want. He's the only musician Eddie Van Halen ever kicked off a tour, and that alone tells you everything about how explosive things got between them. There wasn't a slow buildup, no quiet tension bubbling under the surface. This feud went from zero to chaos instantly. What makes it crazier is that Eddie actually liked Rick at first. He respected him, admired his history, and figured they'd vibe on the road. After all, Derringer was a rock veteran with hits under his belt, and Eddie grew up playing some of those licks himself. But what started as mutual respect quickly spiraled into a storm of ego, pride, and betrayal. And when that line got crossed, Eddie didn't think twice. He had Rick Derringer kicked off the tour on the spot. Eddie had admired the confidence Rick carried on stage. He saw a kind of swagger in him that he wanted to learn from back in the day. But once they toured together, that admiration started to fade fast. The breaking point came during a live show in '78, one that fans still whisper about to this day. Eddie had just finished tearing through one of his wild, jaw-dropping solos, the kind of moment that leaves an entire arena holding its breath. Then, just minutes later, Rick Derringer strutted on stage and started his own set. But the crowd noticed something weird. What Rick was playing wasn't inspired by Eddie's solo, it was Eddie's solo. Note for note, riff for riff, right in front of the same audience that had just heard it. Eddie stood off to the side, eyes narrowed, not amused. He was furious. To him, that wasn't tribute, it was theft. After the show, Eddie didn't hold back. He pulled Rick aside and told him straight up, "I don't care if people use tapping, but copying my melody, that's different." He even reminded him that he'd looked up to him once, hoping to find a little respect in return. But Derringer just shrugged it off, mumbling something about just giving the crowd what they liked, and walked away like it didn't matter. That smug attitude cut deep. But the real shock came the next night, when Derringer doubled down and did it again. Same melody, same phrasing, same ending, and to top it off, he closed his set with "You Really Got Me," Van Halen's own signature track. That was it. Eddie didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't make a scene. He just turned to his crew and said calmly but firmly, "Derringer's not opening for us anymore." No debate, no warnings, no second chances. Rick Derringer had crossed the line once, ignored the warning, and then stomped right over it again. Eddie shut that door permanently. That move became rock legend. The day Eddie Van Halen proved that respect in music isn't optional, it's earned. Even after decades of fame, fortune, and guitar-shredding glory, Eddie Van Halen could never quite shake the ghosts tied to that blacklist. Each name carried a story that cut deep, a reminder that even legends feel pain behind the spotlight. He never went public with it. He wasn't the kind of man to start drama in interviews, but those close to him said the hurt never faded. Every time someone mentioned one of those 6 names, Eddie's smile would falter for just a second. That flash of old frustration in his eyes said it all. The wild thing. Eddie didn't hate any of them for their talent. He hated what came with it. The ego, the cold stares, the dismissive words that made him feel small when all he ever wanted was respect. For a man who built his entire legacy from pure passion and emotion, that kind of rejection stuck like a bruise that never healed. It wasn't about rivalry anymore. It was about broken trust. Sometimes during late-night recording sessions, friends said Eddie would bring up those moments, not with rage, but with quiet reflection. "I just wanted to be treated like a brother in music," he once said. He didn't crave worship, he just wanted connection. But the rock world, as he learned, could be colder than steel. Years later, as time softened him, Eddie began letting go. He stopped letting the bitterness live rent-free in his heart. But the lessons stayed. Each feud, each moment of humiliation became fuel, not for anger, but for greatness. Every note he played carried that emotion, that fire born from pain. Maybe that's why his solos hit harder than anyone else's, because behind the speed and precision was a man who had felt everything. By the end of his life, those who knew him best said Eddie found peace with his past. He no longer needed validation from those 6 names. He'd already proven his worth to the world and to himself. Still, that hidden blacklist remained one of rock's most haunting secrets, a silent echo of every cold stare and cruel word that shaped the legend we remember today. Even after decades of fame, fortune, and those electrifying solos that changed rock forever, Eddie Van Halen could never fully escape the shadows tied to that secret blacklist. Each name told a story of pain, pride, and betrayal. A reminder that even legends carry scars behind the spotlight. He never blasted it in interviews, never aired it out in public, but the people closest to him saw it, the quiet way his eyes darkened whenever one of those names came up. That tiny pause, that faint crack in his smile said everything. What's wild is that Eddie never hated any of them for their skills. He respected their playing. What he couldn't stand was the arrogance, the dismissiveness, the way some of them acted like he didn't belong in the same league. He didn't crave fame or worship. He just wanted mutual respect, musician to musician. But when he realized that the rock world could be colder than he ever imagined, it left a mark that no applause could erase. Friends say during long nights in the studio, Eddie would open up, not angry, not bitter, just reflective. He'd strum a few notes and say, "I just wanted to be treated like a brother in music." That one line showed exactly who he was, a man who cared more about connection than competition. But over time, he learned to let go. The pain, the grudges, the humiliation, they became part of his sound. Every note he played carried the emotion of a man who had seen the dark side of fame and still found joy in the music. Maybe that's why his guitar spoke louder than words ever could, because behind the volume and speed was a heart that had felt everything. By the time his story reached its final chapter, Eddie didn't need validation from anyone. Not Clapton, not Blackmore, not a soul. He had already proven that no cold stare or cruel comment could dim his light. The blacklist may have haunted him for years, but in the end it only fueled his greatness. And that's why we remember him, not for the bitterness, but for the brilliance that came out of it. If you enjoyed diving into the untold stories behind Eddie Van Halen's hidden blacklist, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more jaw-dropping rock revelations. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.